a city. It's about ensuring that ultimately public funds are brought back to a place where they can be used for the purposes of what is coming up in the next election. And I will, as famously as one has already said, that in fact the ANC had already said last year that they have run out of money. Asina mali was the quote they put. They made it quite clear. Let me scare you immediately. Asina mali, we do not have money. We are currently sitting at a deficit. Financially, our situation is crucially bad. This was said only last month. This is the same party that cannot pay its municipal rates in the council. So what is this coalition about? It can only be a coalition set up with the sole purpose of regarnering funds out of the municipality, with the sole purpose of getting back into what Crispin Olivier describes. It is indeed how to steal a city. Fellow South Africans, what became very clear is that at the debate on expropriation without compensation, Mr. Malema, the leader of the EFF, made it clear then that this was a question about black parties versus white parties. We cannot coalesce around race behavior in that manner. It cannot be. Otherwise, that whole principle becomes undemocratic. If you want to form a coalition, it ought to be based on the will of the people and serving the people that have elected you, making sure we deliver services. We can't sit here today and ever say these parties are for that race and these parties are for that race. For if you do that, then why bother having elections? You might as well look at census reports and say, in the census, this is the racial demographics, therefore that must be the electoral outcome. No. What we want is a vibrant democracy where parties coalesce around values, coalesce against a vision to deliver for citizens, and making sure that there's clean governance. And yesterday, that was undermined. Furthermore, the EFF have made it very clear that they were intent always on cutting the throat of whiteness. If you tell citizens that the qualification to be a mayor of any town must be determined by the color of your skin, then ultimately we should undermine the entire democratic principle and undermine the Constitution that stands for this simple notion that South Africa shall belong to all who live in it, black and white, that people are elected because they are serving people, and that the color of your skin does not determine who you serve or how you serve. It ultimately is your character and your content that makes sure that you serve the people. So, what took place yesterday can only be described as a sham, as a mockery, and as an insult to the voters. The council meeting proceeded earlier on in the morning with the view of removing the speaker. The legal process in this regard makes it very clear that in Section 36(3) of the Municipal Structures Act, that the municipal manager of the municipality, or if the municipal manager is not available, a person designated by the MEC of local government in the province presides over the election of a speaker. The crucial emphasis here is that if the municipal manager is not available. Following the events of yesterday, it became quite clear that this newfound coalition can't even understand constitutionality, let alone follow the Systems Act or the Structures Act. They proceeded yesterday by inviting an MEC's designate, the use of provincial power to undermine not a tier of government, but a sphere of government, an independent sphere of government and local government. The municipal manager was available. It is our contention that he was available to chair the meeting, he would have presided over it, and would have proceeded on that basis. A vacancy was declared, to which the caucus moved out, and what was clear is that the process that then moved on from that point on will not past legal muster in our view. And therefore, it is on that basis that after having consulted with our legal team, we've taken a resolute decision to say that the council decision to remove Athol Trollip as executive mayor, we will be taking that on legal review. We have the opinion that the sitting was procedurally invalid and lacked the legitimate authority to elect a new speaker and then subsequently to pass a motion of no confidence in the executive mayor. So therefore, post what took place yesterday, the election of the ANC's Councillor Bulelo Mafaya as a speaker and the motion of no confidence, we believe we will proceed and seek out the best ways to declare those proceedings invalid. The municipal manager yesterday was both present, and there is no ways that he was incapacitated to preside over the sitting that took place yesterday. His role was denied by MEC Xasa and the person designated to him. In our view, these are clear contraventions and a clear abandonment of the requirements put in the Municipal Structures Act, and therefore we believe that these are invalid in law. I want to speak to the question of the DA councillor, Mr. Manyati. Now, in any political party, Mr. Manyati had been in constant contact with us. Up until yesterday, or the day before, Mr. Manyati was standing, highlighting the fact that this new formed coalition had been making advances to him, wanting to assist him with his upcoming case of fraud. It was clear in his communication that, in fact, this was a man that was vulnerable to this newfound coalition set up for the purposes of corruption. And therefore, as a result of that, we are of the complete view that eventually they got to him. And yesterday, he turned against the DA. Now, this is, in our view, treasonous and not right. But ultimately, we have already moved with proceedings to say that we must cessate his membership, and he will no longer be a member of the DA. He's already categorically stated he's leaving, and I think the sooner he does that, the better for him. Fellow South Africans, Nelson Mandela Bay is a question of a contestation between those who want to, on one end, deliver houses, ensure South Africans get a job. I've never been more proud of going into that city. A city that never used to have a metro police now has one. A city that never used to have housing for our people, now they've worked hard to build houses, to deliver. A city that was riddled with corruption now has waged a war against all corruption in that city. It's a battle between those who are focused on delivery and a battle between those who are committed to stealing. It's not me saying it. It's the former president of the ANC, Jacob Zuma, who publicly admitted when he was addressing the people of Nelson Mandela Bay. He said in the ANC's Athol regional conference in the Eastern Cape in 2017, he said, "Of all the metros, I won't talk about Nelson Mandela Metro because you all know about it. We ruined it for years, bit by bit. Now the opposition is in charge. We cannot say we are surprised by that." Now, if Andile Lungisa is back in the Mako, what has changed? Nothing. This is still now an effort to recoup the funding in the elections, to continue, as Crispin Oliver so crisply put it, to steal a city. And ultimately, we hold the ultimate view that says this is not to the benefit of the people of Nelson Mandela Bay. It will ultimately have sacrifices in the process of building a government there. And fellow South Africans, what's become very clear is that the alliance between the ANC and the EFF and the UDM have now been brought together. The decision to say you will remove the DA and bring this new alliance on board is well on its way. And perhaps it goes to show that when political parties stand up before the electorate and say that we've come here to oppose corruption, often what they mean is we oppose the corruption we are not a part of. In the DA, we will not put up with corruption. We will not coalesce with corruption. We will stand strong against it. It is often quite ironic that in 2016, when the EFF councillors voted in Mogale City to put the ANC back into power, the EFF fired those councillors. I find it extraordinarily bizarre to say what has changed between 2016 and now. And my only conclusion can be that perhaps their opposition was only to Jacob Zuma. And now that Cyril Ramaphosa is back, they feel that their faction has won and will continue to become the military wing of the ANC. So ladies and gentlemen, we continue to fight. We'll continue to serve the people of Nelson Mandela Bay, for we never wanted to go into government for our own jackets. We always wanted to put the people of Nelson Mandela Bay first. And I really believe the coalition between the ACDP, between the Congress of the People, between the Democratic Alliance, and later now the PA, has remained resolute in that vision and have done an admirable job, not only in supporting Athol Trollip, but in working with the team there to do the exceptional work that the team in Nelson Mandela Bay of those coalition members have been doing. The people will recognize it and know it for themselves, that the future of South Africa is with those parties who are working to deliver for the people. I'm going to hand over to the Mayor to continue to speak about some of the things that they've worked to achieve.
Thank you very much, Mmusi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. I was involved in an historic campaign in Nelson Mandela Bay, where we as a party had planned years in advance that we wanted to win Nelson Mandela Bay. It was a long campaign, and the ANC support had been waning over a number of years and a number of elections, and they were at a precipitous 51% when we embarked on that campaign. The people of Nelson Mandela Bay voted for change. We promised change, and in that promise we made three very basic undertakings to the citizens of Nelson Mandela Bay. We said that we would stop corruption, we said that we'd grow the economy to create much needed jobs, and we said we'd improve service delivery. Well, there was almost a 17 percentage point swing between the DA and the ANC, and the DA became the biggest party at 47%, and the ANC around 41%. We were able to put a coalition together, and we were able to coalesce around those three promises as coalition partners to make sure that we stopped corruption. We stopped corruption to the tune of at least 615 million rand with contracts that we stopped immediately after taking office. We did grow the economy. We had periods where we showed significant growth as a region, and we all know that cities have become drivers of regional economic growth. We also went through some slumps due to the national situation of our country, the political situation, and the lacuna of leadership under Jacob Zuma. Our city suffered under that, and we have the highest youth unemployment. But we have turned that around. We've tripled the number of EPWP jobs. We have a youth unemployment program. We have an unemployed graduates program, never been had in our city before. We also have increased our financial situation, stronger than it's been in 10 years. We have the top-rated credit rating, AAA-ZA, the same as the city of Cape Town, and we're very proud of that. We've also been able to reduce crime in areas that have been notoriously bad. We've introduced ShotSpotter, amongst other initiatives, where our Metro Police collaborate with the South African Police Services. We've brought crime down in notoriously crime-ridden and gangster-ridden areas. We're very proud of that. And the IPTS buses that we'd spent 2.5 billion rand on over 10 years, and none of them were on the road. They're on the road now. Every day there are more and more people traveling on those buses. These are important successes that we have achieved. But most importantly, the objective achievements where the Treasury identifies that we're governing well and that we spend our capital budget and we spend our capital grant funding. We received windfall funding to the tune of 179 million rand this year from Treasury, which was taken away from metro cities that couldn't spend their money. That windfall funding allowed us to put that money into augmenting our water reserves, because we are facing a terrible drought in our region. So when you govern well, you get recognition from Treasury, you get windfall funding, you're able to do things that you weren't able to budget for in the beginning. So those are the benefits to the people of our city. But 2 years after the change came to our city, the people that have been on the outside, the people that wanted to steal the city, the people that were exposed for stealing the city, had had enough. They run out of money. As Mmusi Maimane said, he quoted the ANC chief whip at the time, Councillor Gidani, who said, "Asna mali." Now that we're out of government, businesses won't give us any money. They know that there's an election coming. They were desperate to take over that city. The public purse is fatter than it's ever been before in Nelson Mandela Bay, and the stakes are very high. There's a national election coming, and they needed access to that purse. So we saw the ANC, the UDM, and the EFF collaborate with one DA councillor to oust this administration of ours, a coalition government that had fulfilled its promises of delivery to the people. They collaborated to get rid of us, but their contrivance was, we believe, unlawful. And we're going to challenge that. We're going to challenge it in the courts, because we believe that the MEC undermined or overrode the responsibility of the city manager, and we believe that he overreached. I want you to know that there's history between the MEC and our city manager. The MEC is litigating against us, against the city manager's appointment. And I want to reinforce that Mr. Metler had been appointed by the previous administration. In fact, he was seconded there by Praveen Gordhan. We appointed the city manager, and we appointed him according to the law. The MEC is challenging that, and we are in court against him. So there's history of enmity between the MEC and the city manager. And what the MEC did yesterday, by seconding an official without even approaching the city manager to deal with the impasse, we believe is overreach, and we will be challenging that today in court. Thank you.
Thanks, Athol. Thanks, Mmusi. So we're going to be simple. We'll take 3 rounds of questions so that we can give each other a chance. Just do the normal business of introducing yourself and the media house that you are representing, and then the leaders will respond on those 3 sets of questions, and we can go forward. So who are the first round? Jan? Anybody else? Wada? And Jason, in that order. Jan?
Good morning, I'm Jan Gerber from Ousting. First off, a question for Mr. Trollip. Do you consider yourself at the moment the mayor, and is your office right, Mr. Kubani, enter and proceed being mayor? Secondly, what does this mean, yesterday's events, what does it mean for other coalition governments, specifically Joburg and Tshwane? And thirdly, I don't doubt that the DA has a weak spot in the council that you keep approved. Also, are you satisfied that going forward with the next elections that you won't have candidates who are a weak spot being accused of fraud, etc.? Thanks.
Okay, cool. Who was second between Wada and Jason?
You sort of covered most of my things, but maybe an added question on where will this illegal application be filed? Is it in what province or what court?
Jason?
It's a question to Mmusi. The EFF said that the next of their sites is Solly Msimanga. I just want to get your response to that. And just a question to Mr. Trollip. Mr. Trollip, I'm sure you know in Cape Town there's going to be a vacancy for mayor soon. Are you up for that vacancy or not? Just a naughty question from around.
Okay, I'll start, because I think only 2 were directed at me, and then Mmusi can deal with the rest of them while the mics are here. First of all, Jason, I'm not up for the position for Mayor of Cape Town because I'm currently the Mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, and you can't hold 2 positions at the same time. So let me go to Jan's question. Yes, Jan, I do believe I'm still the mayor. I believe that what transpired after the replacement of the speaker yesterday is unlawful. That is why we have briefed legal counsel, and that legal counsel will be going to seek review or declarator. That will be done in the High Court, the Eastern Cape High Court in Nelson Mandela Bay. Yeah, I think I've answered those questions.
Jan, you ask a very important question about coalition governments. I believe in coalitions. I think coalitions are the future of South Africa. I think any political party that thinks that we should find ourselves in a situation where we have a one-party state, it would be amiss. It's a robbery to the citizens. Because I tell you, that's how state capture occurs. It's those who are in power behave in an arrogant manner that tells them that they can loot their resources, capture the state, and ultimately have no accountability as a result. It would be dangerous for voters. If next year voters come out to vote, I think they must learn the lessons. Because otherwise state capture is going to occur again. We didn't fight this election so that we can get a better behaved ANC. But the only way we get political parties to actually do what citizens want to do is to exercise their vote. And that's why coalitions are so crucial. But coalitions are also principled. You know, as leader of the DA, we stand for certain things. It doesn't mean when you enter a coalition, you surrender those things. I've never asked the EFF to surrender their project on nationalization. We're not in coalition with them. I'd never ask any other party, and therefore as a DA, we'll always stand for one South Africa for all. We'll always stand for an economy that includes all South Africans. We'll always stand for the principle of constitutionalism and the rule of law and intolerance of corruption, and ultimately a space upon which we are addressing historical injustices. That's a DA's project. We will coalesce with parties that want to stand for those things, that believe that, in fact, private citizens have the power to be able to create wealth. That's why when it comes to even voting on expropriation without compensation, we think citizens must be able to own land in their own rights. And that's why we want to ensure that there's transfer of land to the people, not to the state. So we are not going to abandon that principle. So if you go into a coalition and abandon who you are, then ultimately that coalition is not a coalition, it's a merger. You must say you've given up your entire identity, you are now the same party. That's why the ANC and the EFF can then work together, because I'm not sure what the EFF opposes of the ANC and vice versa. It's the same WhatsApp group, but it's the same thing. So that's on one level. So you ask me, when we go to 2019, we're going to have to negotiate about a program that speaks to what we want to do for the people, because coalitions must be focused on that. Now you asked me about Tshwane. Solim Simanga has done an incredible job in Tshwane. He's done exactly what we set out to do. Fight against corruption. Tshwane today have more than doubled their investment criteria, their direct investment into Tshwane in the last financial year. Tshwane today is a city that we inherited, a city that had hundreds of millions in deficit. Now that city is passing a budget that's fully funded. That's what DA governments do. And independent studies demonstrate that in coalition with people. So coalitions actually work. They work. We've worked with the Congress of the People, we've worked with the ACDP, we've worked with the Freedom Front Plus in Tshwane, and they've worked. And the Patriotic Alliance, they've worked. So to suggest that because others want to coalesce around corruption, that suddenly coalitions don't work would be amiss. So in Tshwane, we hold a simple view. Soli has done his job. If the EFF wants to sponsor a view that they want to reinsert the ANC, then let that be the view. But from where we sit, we will always keep the view that says we work for the people. And therefore, That's what our position is on that regard. And I think I've covered this question. Oh, you asked me the question about candidates. The South African law makes it clear that if you are, in our vetting process, we look out for criminal convictions, we look for everything. You can be assured in DA lists there'd be no candidate that's been found guilty of corruption or guilty of crime. You can be assured of that. If it so happens that an allegation is put before you and you have to go to court, then fine. But Mr. Manyati knows very well that if he was found guilty of fraud, he would be fired from the party. He knows it very well. We don't harbor criminals. We don't keep people in our structures. It's in the constitution of the DA. So in this particular instance, he was facing court action. And therefore they said to him, we'll assist you with this legal matter if you cooperate with us in this regard. But fortunately, he'll no longer be the member of the DA. But be assured, there's nowhere, anywhere where I know people have convictions against them.
Cool, thanks. We'll take the second round. I'll start with Yan. We'll come to you, Paul, and then you'll go to the third round start.
Thank you, Chair. Yan from the media. Leader, there is also a world outside of Port Elizabeth and Tshwane, and that is a number of councils where you co-govern with the EFF and to some degree at their pleasure. What is the state of cooperation and contact between the EFF and the DA at present on a national or what the DA might call a federal level? And to what extent has the DA leadership built a wall against the EFF being forced to the ANC by the attacks upon them from within the DA, thereby creating a situation which is perhaps worse for DA supporters?
It's Athol from Athol. I just want to find Mr. Maimane, why did you come to Cape Town when there was something happening in PE? Because the council took place in PE yesterday, and why is the mayor is here? But things happened in PE. And lastly, we saw a letter on Twitter yesterday where Mr. Manyati said that you are not allowed to terminate his membership. So what's going to happen to that? Thanks.
Cool. Paul?
Paul Bekiota from Bloomberg. Just to follow up on the coalition, what lessons can be extrapolated from this on managing a coalition? Secondly, the coalition that's now in governs Port Elizabeth, what are the chances that's holding together? I think you skipped me, man. Can I just ask my question?
No, you're going to the second round. Take three at a time. You'll be the second on the third round.
All right.
Yan, you ask a very important question. I've never gone out where we've worked together with the EFF and have agreed on issues where they will sponsor and support. It's worked well. And now we have to ask the question, what has changed? The only change I can only assume is the introduction of Mr. Ramaphosa. It's now to a point where, I don't know when last, did you hear the EFF speaking even about an issue like Marikana as a basic issue of an injustice against people? So we have to ask that question. And secondly, along with that, I have so we are of the view that as part of the politics, it would not be us who have pushed the EFF back to the ANC. It would be the question of saying, you can't force us to change principle. You can't say to the DA in Parliament, you will vote for expropriation without compensation. Because you can remember, when they decided to say they will remove Athol Trollip, it was them saying to us, if you don't vote on expropriation without compensation, we'll remove you. What kind of party would we be if then at that point we say, no, we'll stay in government and dissolve all our principles? You can't do that. It's not what you told the people. When you tell South Africans you want them to own land in their own right as individuals so that they can prosper and pass that wealth to future generations, that's your promise to them. You can't now say, oh, well, to stay in government, you are going to compromise your principles. And I think, more than anything, it's been a question of them pushing us away, saying, you are wanting to hold on to your principles, you're not wanting to come to be the EFF. Because if we reject the whole idea of Section 25 and that, we don't stand for individuals. It would be tantamount to us then surrendering our principle. And I think that is the issue. And therefore, the reason why there's a two nadere between the EFF and the ANC is because they agree on those issues. They agree on nationalization. So they are one and the same. That's why I'm saying we must be careful when voters vote to say, you are voting for the ANC, because frankly, you're voting for the EFF. And if you're voting for the EFF, you're voting for the ANC. It's the same. So,
But just on the federal.
and I'll come back to that. The relationship, I've had no problems with the EFF's leadership. We've had contact and all of that, because I still believe more than anything, I'll always continue to want to build a broad spectrum of coalitions going forward. But they are never going to be at the sacrifice of principle. And at this particular point, if that's the sacrifice that we have to pay, where whatever happens in Nelson Mandela Bay or whatever, I would not steer away from that. And more than that, to your other question, which is to say, well, what happens in other places? I think you should stand. You should stand with your people. When the EFF asked us to remove Herman Mashaba, we said we can't. Because that's who we told the voters is going to stand. When Athol Trollip the same, and it's the same for Solim Simanga. Because you would be amiss as a political party to set up a revolving door of mayors on the request of another political party whose motives come from elsewhere. We're dangerous. Honorable said that we are here because I have Parliament here, we have offices here, and we had a National Management Committee to discuss the issue here, and that's why I'm speaking from here. I've always been to Nelson Mandela Bay. I attended the council meeting where they wanted to move things. And I think this is a South African issue more than anything. I think we would be fooling ourselves if we think this is just about Nelson Mandela Bay. It's a South African issue. It's the choice that you want voters to make. Do you want to choose a mobilization around corruption, or you want a mobilization that serves the people? That's the South African issue. Nelson Mandela is one issue, but remember, tomorrow it could be Tshwane, it could be Joburg, it could be wherever. We will always stand up for people, for people. Nowhere in any of these new governments have there been money that's been stolen by any of our people, because they always wanted to prioritize putting money back to the people. So that's where the coalition is strong. And I want to applaud the leaders who've stood resolute in Mr. Lekota, in Mr. Mishwe, in Mr. Groenewald, and the leadership there, even in the Patriotic Alliance. They have worked hard to make sure we hold the line. When Mr. Bobani was asking us to advance monies, we simply said, no, we are not going to do that, and we held the line strong. Today, through the back door, he's now the mayor of Nelson. He's a nominee for mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. Paul?
No, I did ask a question because we saw that issued a document said that is going to interdict the DA's on to remove or terminate his membership.
The DA's constitution is explicit. You stand up publicly, you say you are not going to be a member of the DA, you are leaving the DA. He made that statement categorically. Worse than that, to make it egregious, he even went across in council and said with ANC people, for all intensive purposes, he's a member of the ANC. So how can he stay in the DA? So he can write any letter he likes. I will see him in court if that's what he wants to do. But make no mistake, you can't be a member of the ANC and the DA at the same time. This man is a member of the ANC now, in our view. Paul, I think I've already spoken a lot about the lessons. Coalitions must be focused on principle. There must be, in fact, coalitions that work well. Work with parties. I think, Yan, in your book, you write so well about this issue. About saying that coalitions where parties are vastly different actually work because they're not contesting for constituencies. They actually work on the agreements that say, here's what we're going to focus on and deliver it. This is a true lesson in not only in Africa, but it's also a true lesson in Germany, where there are coalitions, the Netherlands, the UK. So this is part of the common cause. We should know it. South Africa is not immune to this situation. It's a good thing. So long as you can agree on a government program that says you will deliver, you will not stand up for coalitions, you will not stand up for corruption, you will ensure that you deliver for people, you'll ensure that your market-based economy, you will always be non-racial in your view, because the moment you say, we'll pick this mayor because of the color of their skin, etc., then you've got problems. If you were to say to me, what's been one of the more difficult lessons is that you should always make sure parties are committed to that principle. And when members violate that principle, those parties must be willing to act. I can't tell you the countless times I asked even Mr. Holomisa to act against his own councillor in this regard, and there was a delay. It was only up until recently that his party decided to take action against him. So the key lesson here is always that you need institutionally strong parties to ensure that they can deal with their lessons going forward. Lastly, I think this question of the chances of this coalition, if it stays, the biggest victims will be the people. Because you don't change your reputation by what you are going to do. Your reputation precedes you. The ANC government looted the city. That's their own. Crispin Olivier has made it quite clear. It's a unity of corruption. That's what it's set up for. So I think they must take a good leaf out of Minister Batabile Dlamini, that what keeps them together is the Smolanyana skeleton.
Can I just also have an attempt at answering your question, Paul, about what we've learned through coalitions? First of all, in any agreement or relationship, there's got to be a basis of trust, and you've got to have some rules. We have a co-governance agreement, which is very clear about what is expected of all the coalition partners, and when people are in breach of that, there are certain steps to be taken. Now, we've also learned that you must not sacrifice the principle for the relationship. It must be the other way around. We were prepared to do that with Mr. Bobani. We spent nearly 6 months talking to Bantu Holomisa, coming to Cape Town. Right, I've written 26 letters to Bantu Holomisa about the infractions by Councillor Bobani, and eventually I had to relieve him of his responsibility as the mayoral committee member for public health. So you've got to be able to say at a certain point, look, you are disrespecting our agreements, the trust is broken down, we can't cooperate with you. So we've had an experience where we've lost one of our coalition partners, but we've also had a tremendous experience where we've cooperated so unbelievably well with our coalition partners. We've had their leaders come and address us in caucus. They've endorsed us and supported us through very difficult times. Their mayoral committee members have been allowed to express themselves and deliver. There's been no micromanagement. In fact, Lance Grootboom from the ACDP has made a name for himself in Nelson Mandela Bay of cleaning up the city, getting rid of unlawful businesses and making sure that the public health is being maintained. So we've had a collaboration of trust. Even with the Patriotic Alliance, they've been in and out of our coalition twice. But when they left, there was no recrimination. We just departed, and when they came back again, we accepted them back into the fold. They've given us an indication that they're not leaving this coalition, whether we're in government or in opposition. They're staying with this coalition. And I think that that's how you build trust. So we've learned very important lessons there. But to also go to your question about what are we going to do about Councillor Manyati and his charges, or what do we do with people that have got criminal records? Here's the great irony. We've just gotten rid of a president in this country that everybody is now so amazed about how he remained president. We've got a new mayoral committee member for infrastructure and engineering in Andile Longisa. He's already been in jail. He's out on bail. And so is another ANC councillor. Has been in jail. They were sentenced to jail for more than 2 years, both of them. They are out on bail so that they can make applications for leave for appeal. So it's not as if they have a criminal charge against them. They have been found guilty and sentenced to jail for more than 1 year. Now, the regulations require that you cannot be a public representative if you've been sent to jail for more than a year without the option of a fine. So here we have a political party that is putting these people into leadership positions. And I think that is what the voters are not going to forget. The voters are not going to forget that their wishes for change have been undermined by this coalition that has now been cobbled together in Nelson Mandela Bay. But they're also not going to be too enamored with the fact that there are two criminals in that coalition that have allowed this undermining to take place. They shouldn't even be in council. This is the point. If you are, if you've got any credibility with regards to people who've got criminal convictions and who are in jail, they actually have been in jail. They are out on bail currently.
Thanks, Athol. Had two hands in the previous one, so Chris, you go first, and then
Councillor Andile Lungisa and Councillor Nombiba.
Chris, and you'll be the final one.
Chris Magwe from the SABC News. Just short two ones. The first one is, how soon is the DA going to challenge what happened yesterday? And then the second one is it not what happened yesterday actually part of the party's failure to resolve, especially the ongoing dispute between the UDM and the DA in that coalition?
Okay.
Thanks, it's Govan from Maiden Garden. I just wanted to check, when Councillor Manyate was in constant contact with the national leadership, did you raise any other concerns about the DA leadership in Nelson Mandela Bay or nationally? And then secondly, can you just give me a date of the last meeting between the national DA and EFF leadership to discuss coalition?
All right. Chris, that court action is being launched today. And we want to go and apply for it as a question of urgency, and we will take the matter from there. When you ask the question about whether is it about the party's ability to resolve a dispute, let's understand there's a difference in style. Say there's a dispute about this style. We worked hard. The Mayor Athol Trollip has already said, I worked hard to bring people together. We met with the leadership. We continued to discuss the matters that were taking place there. There comes a point where somebody says, I'm no longer part of this coalition, which Councillor Bobani made that clear. The first act in a coalition, doesn't matter what it is, the first thing that you agree on is that you shall never vote with the opposition. Otherwise, you are not in a coalition. You are working with those people. And Councillor Bobani proceeded to do that. So that's no longer a dispute then. That's somebody having declared, I'm not a member of this. Somebody who then proceeds to march against the municipality. Somebody who then sponsors a motion of no confidence against the city. Therefore, how can you say you are in coalition with those people? You are not. So there was no dispute. There was just a councillor who decided that they are no longer a member of the coalition. So that settled the matter for us. Mr. Manyati was dealing at local structures. And I think Mr. Trollip will respond to that particular question. In as far as the discussions between the national leadership and all of that, we had constant contact with the leadership of the EFF. Certainly, I'd been speaking to them continuously. So it's not like we had formalized meetings. Our agreement with them was always that when there's an issue, we'll meet, but then we can talk. And we've always been able to speak. So it's not like the relationship is dysfunctional. We work and we speak with the people. So.
With regard to Councillor Manyati's relationship with the DA, I'll just read you one SMS when the first motion of no confidence was mooted against us. Good afternoon, Mayor. Democrats are all rallying behind you and Speaker because we are clear vote of no confidence is not about you, but it's about us as a DA family. Stay strong and focused. The DA will still be in power even after tomorrow's council meeting. ANC's backdoor victory won't succeed. Now, that was Councillor Manyati to me on the 29th of November. In the build-up to these last few initiatives with the motions of no confidence, Councillor Manyati has been giving us feedback, myself and the provincial leader of the DA, Councillor Ngaba Panga, on his meetings and interactions with Andile Lungisa and other ANC members, and that they'd been making financial offers to him, We have that on record. He was feeding that back to us. And then yesterday in council, when he did not vote with us in the motion to remove the speaker, you could see that he was decidedly uncomfortable. If you watch the video, you'll see that he was even aggressive, saying that he wants change in the city and he wants change even nationally, which is fundamentally different to these messages that I have on my phone. There are a whole lot of others where he was pictured representing us on radio stations, giving me updates on good work that he was doing in the wards in the area that he works in. There was absolutely no indication from Councillor Maimane whatsoever on my Twitter and WhatsApp and SMS messages. In fact, there was even recently a piece of propaganda about a DA pamphlet which he countered with a local journalist and stood firmly behind the fact that this was just propaganda, ANC propaganda, and then he made an about turn in council yesterday. So it's very clear that Councillor Maimane had been turned. There was no indication whatsoever before that he had any unhappiness in the Democratic Alliance. It was a great surprise to all of us that he did not vote yesterday.
Thanks, Athol. Thanks, everyone, for coming. The man needs to get back to do the rest of his work.
Siyasebenza.
Can we have you live right now on ENCA?
Sure.
Thank you. He's ready.